Greetings and thank you. Wanted to welcome everyone to this presentation, the importance of OSINT and why it matters. And again, special shout out to the hosts and greatly appreciated for inviting us on to speak about this topic today.
As part of a quick introduction, my name is Will Kuna, the Director of Enterprise Security here at Recorded Future.
And I'm Jim Wolf. I'm the Principal Security Architect here at Recorded Future. Just to highlight, because it is SOC Analyst Appreciation Day, I have quite a bit of experience working in the SOC. I started as a SOC Analyst and admin, and have since done some consulting roles and director roles and architect roles. So happy to be able to give a presentation here today.
Yeah, and my name is Richard Latulip. I'm the field CISO, and unlike Will and Jim, I didn't start off technical. I actually went to the university and learned about criminal justice, which led me into the U.S. Secret Service. And I'd have to say about approximately 4 years after joining the Secret Service, you know, this was kind of how I started my technical journey, where I walked into my supervisor's office, saw him sitting behind the desk with a puzzled look on his face, asked him, you know, what was wrong and how can I help? And his statement to me was, I'm having trouble printing. And of course I said, hey, let me see if I can take a look and I can fix this for you. Got behind the desk, installed a printer driver, and I was identified as highly technical and then sent off to computer forensics and incident response school. From there, I just have been pretty much grinding on doing computer forensics incident response, but that led me also to the dark web, undercover operations, critical infrastructure, cyber threat intelligence. And then, of course, after I retired from the government, this got me into, you know, leading teams and working in director positions in the beginning, and then eventually ending here. But vulnerability management, pen testing, and of course, still digital forensics and incident response is part of what I was doing. But with all that, let's get into it. So what we're going to talk about here is a little bit of the evolution, right? Then and now, where are we at? Where were we? So outside of government, obviously, if you had government, you had a wide variety of technologies. But when we started looking at OSINT specifically, and we started looking at the collection of that data, it was pretty just ad hoc. There was no mass collections. There was no rhyme or reason. As a matter of fact, I think that most organizations probably deferred from using OSINT as an opportunity to gather the information. It was more of a variety of tools, and of course, you know, very slowly you would see the recognition of moving forward in a different direction and kind of trying to get to that ideal single pane of glass. It took a while, and of course, you know, the old school moves into the new school. I like to think about it, you know, I remember during the time frame, right, when in 2000 there was an article written about the internet going away or being a fad. It's kind of interesting on the progression from there, and the fact that there was a thought that the internet would go away, but here we are, obviously full forward, and you can see, right, in today's opportunities, what we're going to speak about is where has it progressed to, and why is it important in terms of getting this information and being able to centralize it, cultivate it, and also be able to make sure that we're bringing the right intelligence at the right time and the right alerts at the right time. So at Recorded Future, the thing that we looked at is trying to do what we can to grab as much of the internet as possible, you know, get as much intelligence from a wide variety of resources and bring that into our engine, right? So when we look at open source, we look at all those things on the web. Then we look at the dark web resources, and then we look at the research. We bring all that together in terms of our machine, and we mix that, we analyze that, we create reports, and that comes to a variety of outputs. But with this, I'd like to direct you to the right of the, well, my right of the screen, where it says security outcomes enabled by. It's again, we talk about real time, and for us, when we talk about the real time, we're validating this always, right? Our founder, Christopher, one of the individuals who had the idea of where we need to get to and how we need to get there, he's consistently using a variety of social media platforms. He's using a variety of other opportunities to post articles, news, tweets, you name it, it's putting out there. And the idea is also to say, when he tweets, how quick does that end up into our engine and then becomes normalized and is recognizable? And we've got that down to a science so that we know if he's doing this, what we're able to gather from social media places like, when we talk about social media, we'll talk about, of course, Twitter, we talk about Telegram. Telegram is a huge resource of information and intelligence. And to be able to go into those chats, especially the public chats, and to be able to find the intelligence that we need to leverage to be able to make our clients safer. It's about cultivating that and bring the real-time actionable intelligence onto your doorstep. And another way in which we're doing that is being able to, create reports through our Insync group. The Insync takes a lot of the intelligence and puts it into a report fashion that you can then consume individually. You can also ask for these reports directly, and these can be then ingested into your, say, strategy, where your roadmap is going and where you want to get to and how you want to get there. And we talked about what we gather, right? So intelligence is also not going to be valuable unless it's not holistic. And so the other aspect, what we try to stress is, based on your organization, integrations are going to be key for your success. Enrichment within whatever your single pane of glass is, whether it be a ServiceNow or a Splunk or CrowdStrike, but wherever your telemetry is coming from or going into, what we'd like to do is be that point. So when all of the alerts and all the information is coming in, and obviously anyone that's worked in a SOC for a large to medium-sized organizations understands you could be potentially getting thousands of alerts per day. And those alerts, without proper enrichment and without proper cultivation, you're swimming through kind of trying to do the best you can, and you're answering and you're working where you are. But if we start integrating intelligence through the process and bringing it to the top of the stage, what we're doing now is bubbling up the most risky alerts to your organization. Those alerts could be anything, to be honest, but the point being is, you have an alert and then you combine that with intelligence, and from the intelligence you understand that maybe the CBSS score is a higher score, which is one of the reasons why you're paying attention to it. But then what you have is also the opportunity to say, what are they doing? What's the APT doing in real time? Are they actually using that and applying that in real time, and it's being exploited in real time? And so these opportunities, by integrating throughout your environment holistically, brings a unique perspective to your leadership and to your analysts. The last thing you need to do in today's day and age is spend too long on a alert, because we know that time is of the essence. The longer you wait and the longer you get, say, lost in the data, the reality comes to it that, a person can be exploited, and they can be exploited in today's day and age. What we're talking about, less than 15 minutes, you would then have access to an organization, and then you'd say within a couple hours you can move laterally and escalate privileges, and then you're on your way to finding the crown jewels within your organization. So by applying a holistic methodology throughout an organization, we're bubbling up the most important threats that your organization faces. And how are we doing that? This is one of those slides where you can look at the variety of tools in which we offer. We refer to them as modules, and you can look through these different modules and you can understand what it is and where it is that we bring or can add value. Now, with Recorded Future, we understand that not everyone needs every module. That's why we've broken it down into these what is this, 8, 9, 10 modules, right? Services is not really a module. I think that's more of support, and that's in the lower right-hand corner. So there's really just the 9 modules that you're going to be, picking from. And so what's most important to your organization is where I would say that you need to look at. Is it attack surface? Are you having a issue with spinning up and spinning down technology that's on your edge that could be vulnerable to a variety of threats? Is it something where you're concerned about brand and you're worried about the usage of your brand in a malicious way? The other area is geopolitical, right? Geopolitical, I think, spans a wide variety of areas. When we look at the geopolitical landscape, we can say, let's geofence all of our locations globally. And then we're being able to see what is, if possible, threats that generate outside, looking at human safety, which is a responsibility of cybersecurity. And then, of course, you look at third party, right? I think that SolarWinds and CDK Global, these types of risks that organizations face that aren't directly created by their organization, but by a person who's providing intelligence to them or providing the resources that they need. So being aware of whether or not a third party that you have is being breached or has been breached, could be very crucial to how you now create your strategy and move forward from that day forward. And of course, vulnerability management, as we all know, this is one of the areas in which, if we're not doing vulnerability management correct, then we're going to be missing the mark. And the reason I say this is because, when we start saying patches, which would be remedying a 0 day, you have a 1 day, and based on your vulnerability management program, do you patch in 30 days? Do you patch in 60 days? Do you patch in 90 days? It's an interesting statistic as you start looking at the percentage, but some organizations 365 days later have still 8% of those vulnerabilities unpatched and on their network without compensating controls. These are one of the reasons why you see the adversaries consistently scanning for Log4j. They're still able to crack the outer shell, if you will, of an organization because of, the attack surface is always going up and down. And sometimes people, just out of the speed of getting things done and working diligently to do the right thing, they make slight errors and they put vulnerable machines out there and they are in the public, and these can be exposed to Log4j. And we're seeing the adversary still having success in this area. And here we have just kind of a graphic of, a day in life of an organization, right? So when we look at this and we talk about the strategic to tactical, when we start applying recorded future into an environment, we start looking at your organization uniquely, we create these heat maps, and these heat maps are generally, and that heat map, I'm starting in the upper left here, and I'm going to be moving across and down. But generally speaking, that heat map is taking adversaries who are most likely to be targeting your organization. And what we're doing is we're saying, here they are at the current time and space. Now, all of the dots that you would see on your individualized heat map will either escalate or de-escalate based on the current risk profile of that adversary towards your organization. And this very easily can be connected to, to a particular CVE that we see them exploiting. That could be tied to your assets that you own. And so we see that that's something that you need to be careful on, which raises the risk score and introduces that into your organization. And then as you move across, you can start doing the strategic, right? So you can start looking at that adversary. You can kind of tie that into the MITRE attack framework. And then from tying it to the MITRE attack framework, you can create a strategy to best defend your organization. The scorecards that I was talking about are at the very bottom where you see the 99 and the 89. Again, those things go up and down because what we're trying to do here at Recorded Future is make sure that you're aware of the most viable risks to your organization at that point in time. Tomorrow, they may not be a 99, they may be a 50, but then the next day they can jump right back up to a 99. So it's ever fluctuating, and this is kind of tying to what real world operations look like. And another area in which Recorded Future is trying to contribute to say the greater community or the greater good is working with our partners in military and or governments. These defend forward operations give unique insight for us to be able to better prepare for the future by partnering with the military. And say, for example, in the work that we do in Ukraine, we're actually out there on the forefront and we're identifying, because in today's day and age, if you look at it, right, 2007, you had the first cyber attack against a nation. That was, everyone says it was Russia. Of course, Russia denies it. But Estonia had moved a war memorial, a statue that honored or commemorated soldiers that had fought in World War II. They moved it from what was called a prominent location to what they consider a less prominent location, which kicked off riots and protests, which led to a cyber attack against Estonia. This led them to actually disconnecting from the internet and going offline for over 72 hours. And during that time frame, it was trying to figure out what was happening. And of course, you look at the next things forward when Russia went into what they claimed was humanitarian reasons into Georgia. The playbook in today's day and age is cyber operations first, followed by kinetic. And so what we're trying to do is be there when the cyber attacks are happening so that we can find this novel malware, the novel tactics and techniques and procedures that the adversaries use, and be able to figure out, and by reverse engineering what they're doing, and then taking that intelligence and creating, the threat hunting packages so that regular organizations, because make no mistake about it. Now, if you're in critical infrastructure, you might have a higher risk scale here, but if you aren't, say you are having a cutting edge technology or disruptive technology, this could be very valuable as well. So at one point in time, you may be, and so being able to understand how your adversary works and applying a strategy to help prevent that bad day is one of the reasons why we're working with our partners in the military and governments to do these defend forward operations. And what we like to say, it's actionable for everybody, right? Everyone can use this, and it comes down to this. You can put it in your browser, you can have it on your mobile app, you can have it connected to the main point of entry, whether it be a Splunk or ServiceNow, integrating with that, and also being able to enrich the intelligence you have, because quite frankly, having the right intelligence at the right time gives you and your leaders the opportunity to be able to make the best decisions. And like all other organizations, we use AI here at Recorded Future to be able to better cultivate and bring to you the most viable risks or the best information at your fingertips, almost at the click of a button. It makes your job easier. It makes it, available for you to be able to have the right tools in front of you to be able to make good decisions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Will and Jim.
Thanks, Rich. So now that we're transitioning from the value of intelligence, we want to talk a little bit about how we at Recorded Future are serving as customer zero for our product, for Recorded Future. And what does that look like when we are operating within the security team here at Recorded Future? So thanks for that, Rich. One of the biggest things we have been talking about in the past year and a half has been about our metrics, about what it is we are measuring. Because we really strongly believe that you are what you measure. And so we've had a lot of discussions about, okay, we need to measure something, but what is it that we need to measure? Because as we all know, like logs or alerts, you can measure the wrong things, you can alert on the wrong things, and it could actually be more of a negative than a positive. So we look at what we measure and how we measure, first at what the audience of the reporting or the metrics should be. So for example, as you see here, you've got the C-suite level, the executive level, bottom line up front is what we like to use a lot. What do they need to know? When do they need to know it? And what decisions are needing to be made at that time? Below that is the managerial level. This comprises a kind of the mixture between the more technical folks at the analyst level, but also the ability to translate and communicate up to the C-suite level what it is are the most important things and serve as a buffer in terms of decision making in the refinement and review of whatever metrics or information are being presented. And then lastly, at the analyst level, as this group is very familiar with, you are the ones that are on the front lines, looking at the logs, looking at the data, and really helping to decipher what it is that needs to be paid attention to, and also what is it that doesn't need to be paid attention to. Here's an example, a generic example of our security stack here, which probably looks very similar to the security stack that you operate. A lot of these terms are familiar to you. But we here at Recorded Future use all of the things that you see on this screen in a variety of different ways. But as you notice at the very bottom, we put threat intelligence because we think threat intelligence is really what underpins the strength and capability of not only an organization and a SOC, but your security stack. And if the intelligence that's being provided to and being taken out of your security stack is not where it needs to be, then everything else up and down the stack is going to be affected accordingly. So we really think as a threat intelligence company, but as a security team, that the intelligence that we are getting from our product and providing to our product are what drive our decisions, what drive the metrics we're talking about, what drive all of the strategies that we are developing. So this is a snapshot of how we used to measure certain things within our organization. Probably looks familiar. It's a Excel spreadsheet, and it is a rudimentary way that we were using to measure compliance metrics, adoption rates, you name it, everything I showed on the previous slide for the stack. This is how we were operating, and it served a good way as a roadmap or an on-ramp to moving to the way we are currently doing it now, which is this. So we have transitioned to more of an automated in, automated out flow of the metrics that are important to us. And those metrics change. We start at the beginning of the year saying, what do we want our goals to be for the year, whether it is onboarding a certain number of users into a new platform, or whether it is taking a look at our compliance in terms of endpoints. Whatever they might be at the beginning of the year, we have worked to keep them, but also if they turned out to not be as relevant as we originally thought, then they go out and we add a new one. And so this is what we have transitioned to and what we are providing up from the analyst level all the way to the C-suite level as to how we feel like we are doing from a security standpoint at our organization. And we will talk more about this later, but it just shows you the maturation process that we have gone through internally here to get better at deciding what we want to measure and then actively measuring it, and then taking the measurements that we have and taking action on them. Like Rich is saying, we talk a lot about actionability, and a metric is only as good as your ability to action on it. And that's something that we really try and strive for in whatever it is we're doing. So we've broken down this part of the presentation into a number of different scenarios. And one of the ones we get asked about a lot is, how is Recorded Future and how are we on the security team dealing with the compromised credentials scenario? So I'll hand it over to Jim and he can walk us through this.
Yeah, thanks, Will. So whenever we were looking at gathering a lot of our telemetry and centralizing it, we then started to make decisions on what can we do with this visibility and the data that we have. And one of the first things that we realized we probably had a really good opportunity to take action on was getting our identity module data into our SIM. We realized that we look at identities in two ways here with our identity module. We have identities that are customer accounts, so people who use our platform, right? We have you can sign up and use our various platforms. So we care about your accounts, but we also care about our user accounts. So somebody who has an @recordedfuture.com account, our employees, we want to monitor their accounts as well. Using our intelligence, we're able to monitor both. So in this first example, we're focusing on our customer accounts, people who use our platform. When we got the telemetry in, we realized that we were able to see their credentials for sale on the dark web. We're able to see a lot of credentials for sale on the dark web. And what we're able to do is determine what platforms are those credentials used on. And if they're used on any of our platforms, we should go through the due diligence of resetting their credentials, making sure that 2FA is enforced, and then when able, notify the user that we've gone through that process. So whenever we turned this feature on, it was probably a little bit more than a year and a half ago. We turned it on and we realized that we had a really high influx of these identities that we were able to reset. Part of that is that some of our tools were and still are free to sign up for. So we were seeing, some Gmail accounts, Outlook accounts that we know log into our account, log into our platforms. With that intelligence, we realized that, again, we should go through the due diligence of resetting their creds and enforcing MFA. And we automated this process by pulling that data into our SIM, deduping the data to make sure that it's not a a repeat of a credential dump. And then we've actually automated the process where we're able to notify our support teams via Jira tickets and emails to automatically have that account reset. So we started with telemetry and visibility, realized the value that we had there, and then we automated the process by having it flow through Jira. I think since we've done this in the last 18 months, we've had probably 2,500 or 3,000 account resets. That's something that, I think shows the value of the data that getting the data in, it shows the value of the intelligence that we're getting, but also shows that it really made sense for us to automate that process. Right now, whenever we send an account to be reset, we're basically kept in the loop so that we can measure, how often it's happening, who's been impacted. We also keep if you use our core platform, we notify users that their account's been reset because it's quite likely that they might need to reset it elsewhere. Will, if you want to jump to the next slide. Up above is an example of one of the emails that we're able to generate and send to our support team. We've tweaked this process a bit now where it flows through Jira instead of email so that we have better telemetry. But what I just described was how we focus on user accounts that use our product. Will, if you want to talk about how we leverage our IDP in an API integration to tackle recordedfuture.com accounts that have been compromised?
Sure. Yeah. So much like Jim was talking about on the customer external side, we've been able to develop in-house an integration between our IDP and our SIM platform to basically leverage the intelligence that we have, that if it picks up any stolen credentials or a credential dump of internal employees, it notifies us and then trips off an automatic integration with our IDP that then takes that user and puts them into what we call a compromised users group. That allows us to get notified of the situation, and then at the time of it occurring or the alert firing, that user their access is suspended. And so it kind of presses the pause button and allows us to go in and say, okay, what is it that's going on? Is this something that was previously known about, or is this a new situation in which we need to be mindful of? And then we can evaluate and then take it from there, whether we need to rotate their credentials or we need to keep them in that group, or if it's a false positive. One of the things in the top right you see we're looking at doing is expanding this and leveraging, again, our intelligence to where we're not only alerting and taking action based off of credentials, but also known malicious IP addresses. We've experienced in the past some situations where we've been the victims, I'm sure all of you have, password spraying, and that was having the impact of potentially or actually locking out some users. And so by leveraging our intelligence with our IDP, we can say, okay, we have a list of, let's say, 5,000 known bad or known malicious IP addresses. If we see requests or if we see attempted authentications from those locations, we should go ahead and block them automatically and not even deal with them. And that allows us to focus more on what we should be focused on in the future. So this is something we're developing currently, should be live relatively soon. And we would like to take it not only in terms of integration with our IDP that we're currently using, but also with our SaaS platform that we're in the process of rolling out and Jim is leading. So we're really excited about this. I think it can really help allow us to focus on what we need to focus on instead of worrying about the noise, especially if we already have a pretty solid list of known malicious IPs that are readily available to us.
So next we'll talk about attack surface discovery and how we're leveraging this capability here at Recorded Future. So what we do with our attack surface discovery can do quite a bit, but one of the key things I think is easy to chat through and really shows a lot of value is how are we able to monitor new sites or hosts that are associated with our attack surface. So, if somebody stands up something that is a recordedfuture.com server or address that is available on the internet, we typically are going to want to know about that, and we typically should know about it prior to it being stood up. So attack surface discovery, I think one of the great ways to use it is it's a barometer for knowing, did you know about if a piece of infrastructure was going to be stood up ahead of time? And then, are you able to go through the proper security controls to make sure that it's stood up securely? But also, for whatever reason, maybe is infrastructure ever stood up that you didn't know about, or is infrastructure that isn't associated with you that you want to know about? So what we're able to do here is get emails, and we're able to monitor passively, hey, has new infrastructure that is tied to us been detected on the internet? Most of the time, we've already gone through the security review. We're quite aware of it, but every now and then, and it's not necessarily people being malicious. I think a lot of the times it's just people trying to do their jobs and maybe move quick on a project. Maybe they stand up a piece of infrastructure that is associated with us, but we didn't know about, and we just need to go through and make sure that we have the security controls in place. We're able to pretty quickly, find out what are the services running on that infrastructure. Just through attack surface itself, we're able to, check for vulnerabilities, look for ports, processes, what have you. We're also able to go internally and say, did we know about this? And if not, let's make sure that we, probably take it down, make sure that we really secure it before it is publicly available. So that's one of the initial use cases that, attack surface discovery really helps us with. I think the second one, Will, if you want to jump to the next slide, is sometimes we see infrastructure that looks like it's associated with us, but it isn't. So, brand risk or brand reputation. So, sometimes, especially, we've gone through some acquisition, we've had acquisitions, have brought companies in like Security Trails, which provides our attack surface capabilities here. Sometimes we have infrastructure that looks as though it could be typo squatting some of our domains. So, we might see a weird recordedfuture.com what have you domain, or we might see here like a weird hatching or Security Trails domain that isn't actually associated with us, but we're pretty sure either, based on the intelligence that we're able to get around that it is a typo squat, or it is something that we need to be concerned about. If it is, a brand risk for us, we're able to go through the initiate the process of actually going through a takedown of that infrastructure. And, a lot of the times this leads to more proactive measures to also prevent items from this happening again. So, if you see one typo squat domain of a certain flavor, maybe you need to realize that you need to register other ones as well. So I think this is something that's been very valuable for us, and is something that luckily doesn't fire too often, but whenever it does, it's quite actionable.
And one thing just to reiterate, I mean, our organization is relatively small, and I think where we have really seen the value of this and much larger organizations would see it is the scalability of it. I mean, as Jim mentioned, I think we do a decent job at being notified or being in the loop or on the loop of when new infrastructure or domains are being stood up. However, if you take the size of our organization and multiply it by 3 or by 4, that becomes exponentially more difficult to manage, which this capability really helps you keep control of. And I think the scalability of it is really something that's pretty cool.
So next, we're going to talk about SOC operations, which is a pretty wide topic, but we're going to talk about how are we using intelligence and telemetry within some of the different modules that we have and the action that we're able to take on that data. So within our platform, we have the SecOps module, which a lot of what that encompasses is we have collective insights data. So data that we forward to our platform from various sources. We have our SIM, Splunk, which we're able to feed a lot of key data sources and alerts from our platform over into SecOps. We also are able to integrate our EDR and our IDP. So for threat-specific events from there, if you go into the integration center of our platform, you'll see that we have a library of different connections. But what we want to be able to do is grab alert information from all these different tools, everybody has tools that's generating threat information. How can you consolidate those into a single module, a single pane of glass, and run intelligence on top of that, right? So on the left-hand side, we're able to see that the left-hand side of this screen is actually a screenshot directly from our SecOps module. So on the top, we're actually able to see a time chart of the different, how many different types of indicators are we seeing within our environment? What different IPs, different domains, different URLs, file hashes that we're seeing in the environment. What does that look like over a period of time? And on the bottom, what we try to do with all those IOCs is map them to MITRE, right? MITRE is a great way to kind of illustrate where are you seeing indicators in your environment, hopefully where are you stopping indicators within your environment, and that can, typically illustrate to you if you don't have much visibility in an area, it might be that you don't have good telemetry or visibility or security controls in that area. On the right-hand side, this is from our SIM. We're visualizing the data in just another way. So we have a risk histogram up top. So of all the telemetry that we're pumping into SecOps, how many of those are deemed to be extremely risky, right? From an operations perspective, like a SOC perspective, you want to focus on your critical indicators, your critical alerts first, and then work your way down. So that view on the right-hand side is one of the ways that we're able to do that. Anything that is a high risk, 80, 90 and above out of 100, focus on those indicators first, determine what's happening, and then you can start to reduce down. Will, if you want to jump to the next slide. So this is one of the ways that we're able to look at our information that we have within SecOps and look at the charts and determine what, are we able to see anything interesting? Within that module, you're able to dig down into any of the atomic indicators and see where did the data come from. So, did it come from your email gateway? Did it come from your EDR? Did it come from your SASE platform? And you're also able to see the risk that's associated with it. But so being able to look at those very granular details is important. But oftentimes with security telemetry, just looking at charts and graphs, you're able to probably determine if something strange has happened that you need to dive into. I think this is a great screenshot to show that. So on the top, we can see that there's a spike in hash values on a specific day. What we were able to do from the screenshot is pivot back and see what caused that specific spike, because it is clearly an outlier. And we were able to determine that a threat researcher had accidentally downloaded a zip file with some malware binaries on their endpoint, and it triggered a lot of alerts within our EDR. So this is just another way to show that we had other ways to detect that, but being able to view that in a centralized SecOps platform is another way for us to kind of bubble up what are the indicators and what are the events that are happening that we might have missed. Next, I want to talk about the sandbox. So we have our record a future sandbox where we're able to detonate malware, and we're able to see, what are the different IOCs, indicators, processes that are associated with that malware, and really do a deep dive, right? Have a secure place to detonate the malware and view what is happening. One of the key things that we leverage quite a bit is we use our EDR integration with the sandbox to automatically be able to grab files, malicious files, potentially malicious files, and directly send them to our sandbox for further analysis and to get the risk score. This is, it's just giving us more opportunity to pivot into different tools to get a different verdict. And we really trust our intelligence and our sandbox to be able to give us the verdict that we care about. So this is showing how SentinelOne has a native integration. Most EDRs, I think, do have a native integration with our platform. Will, if you want to jump to the next slide, this is an example of what we would see within our actual sandbox. So anytime that we go into our sandbox, we can see any of the automatic submissions that we've had from our EDR platform. We're able to see, what is the verdict? What's the risk score associated with that? But we use our sandbox for a lot of other stuff too. You're able to put any file that you want in there, any domain, any URL. So phishing is a very common thing that we're running through our sandbox to make determinations on. So a lot of ways that we can integrate our sandbox. This is just a quick one, but I would say that this is one of the tools that especially our incident response team is using the most.
So the last use case we want to talk about today is third-party risk. It's gotten a lot of news, especially lately. And every organization, including yours and ours, has a lot of vendors and plugins to other organizations that we've got to be mindful of. And so as part of the security team here, we're really right in the center of that. And it's a pretty big process that's only growing as we have grown and as there have been more and more capabilities available. So we like to look at it as a three-part process. In the bottom left is a snapshot of just our review form. So basically, if I am a employee and I am looking to add a new integration or work with a new vendor, a form is submitted to security that we then loop in legal primarily, and they say this is what we are looking to do. This is what the capability does. This is a company and a bunch of other information, and from there we then dive into it. In the litmus test for whether or not it needs to have a review is it touching our data, our systems, or our services? Those are the primary three things. So on the first part of that is from a third-party intelligence perspective, leveraging our own third-party intelligence module and taking a look at the vendor and seeing what our product is saying about them. Are they at a heightened risk? And to Rich's point earlier, that changes over time. So have we seen it spike recently? Have we seen it go down recently? What is contributing to that? Is it geopolitical? Is it technical issues that we're seeing? But our third-party module is really what drives the conversation throughout the course of our review of this given vendor. We then go into a second part where we look at the documentation. So do we have a SOC 2? Do we have a pen test report? Can we look at anything that might be of note, primarily on the pen test report, but definitely on the SOC report, more from just a GRC perspective. But this gives us a little bit more insight into the vendor we're looking to do business with and anything we might need to be mindful of. And a lot of times what this leads to is we take our third-party intelligence card and the information we gathered from our platform, and we couple it with what the vendor is providing us, and we try and make sure that those make sense. If there's a glaring omission maybe from the pen test report that we see on our end, or vice versa, that's a good conversation for us to have when we are going through the review with the vendor. And then the last part of that is from a technical implementation standpoint. How is it going to connect to our data? How is it going to connect to our environment? What does that look like from an authorization and authentication perspective? All of the different components of that integration we look at with the stakeholder and make sure that all of that makes sense. And that information is then fed to our legal team. And the legal team really helps us in terms of from a, not prioritization, but from a classification standpoint. So for example, if we are onboarding a new vendor that might be dealing with publicly available data that's on our website, from a marketing perspective, we would look at that as a lower risk, not in terms of doing a not as thorough of a review, but from a agreement standpoint, there might be fewer controls that we require of that vendor versus if it's someone that's tying into our Salesforce platform and there's sensitive data in that would come with a much higher scrutiny, not only in the agreement, but just in the technical implementation review. So we try and scale it, because if we were to do a full-blown review of every single item for every single vendor, as you can probably imagine, we only be doing vendor reviews. We are a pretty mighty team, but we're relatively small, and so we were trying to figure out ways to leverage our intelligence and everything we have around us to make smarter decisions that are more actionable and scale up and also scale down depending on what it is we're looking to do. And that concludes our module review. Rich, I can hand it back over to you if there's any closing comments, but I really appreciate your time and our ability to present to you today.
No, I mean, obviously a lot of great information, and I think a lot of great content here, and hopefully everyone found some value from it. And we just really appreciate the opportunity to come before you guys and speak.
Thanks, y'all.